The 1st of October, 1946, Nuremberg, Germany. After more than 10 months on trial, 21 defendants, who are among the most important political, military, and economic leaders of Nazi Germany, hear their sentences read. These high-ranking representatives of the criminal Nazi regime have to finally take responsibility for their crimes and answer before an international military tribunal who would punish them for unspeakable atrocities committed during the Second World War. It is only the first of many war crime trials held after the Second World War and would become a warning to war criminals and dictators everywhere. Once the true extent of German atrocities, especially against Jews, are revealed, 12 defendants out of the 21 are sentenced to death by hanging. One of them is a committed anti-Semite and fanatical Hitler loyalist, who in his position as Reinhard Heydrich's successor controlled the Gestapo, criminal police, and Nazi security service, and was a prime figure in the final solution, which was the mass murder of Europe's Jews. His name is Ernst Kaltenbrunner. Ernst Kaltenbrunner, the son of the lawyer Hugo Kaltenbrunner, and his wife Teresa, was born on the 4th of October, 1903, in Ried-im-Innkreis, a town located approximately 43 miles west of Linz, then part of Austria-Hungary. Raised in a nationalist family, young Ernst spent his early years and primary education in the nearby city of Raab. Kaltenbrunner then attended the gymnasium in Linz, and after graduating in 1921, he began studying chemistry at the Technical University of Graz. However, he soon switched to law and received his doctorate from Graz University in 1926. After completing his studies, Kaltenbrunner was employed by a well-known law firm in Linz until the summer of 1929. During this time, he was also involved in various paramilitary groups, and his main political goal was the annexation of Austria to the German Reich. He shared this goal with the German Nazi Party, which he joined in October 1930, and in August 1931, he joined the SS. In the following year, Kaltenbrunner began working at his father's law practice, and by 1933, he had become the head of the National Socialist Lawyers League in Linz. During this time, he made a name for himself as a defender of imprisoned party members. Beginning in May 1933, the Austrian Nazis waged a propaganda and terror campaign, which was encouraged and funded by Germany. The Nazi goal was to undermine the regime of the Austrian Chancellor Engelbert Dollfuss by making it look incompetent. They staged disruptive protests and brawled with political opponents and the police. Austrian Nazis set off explosives and tear gas bombs in public places and Jewish-owned businesses. In June 1933, in response to a fatal Nazi bombing, the Dollfuss regime banned the Austrian Nazi Party and its affiliates. Although the Nazi movement became illegal in Austria, the Austrian Nazis continued to operate illegally within the country. In January 1934, Kaltenbrunner was briefly jailed with other Nazis for conspiracy by the Dollfuss government. While in prison, he led a hunger strike, which forced the government to release 490 of the party members. On the 25th of July, 1934, when Austrian Nazis attempted to overthrow the Austrian government, the conspirators shot and killed Chancellor Dollfuss. However, the majority of Austrians remained loyal to the government, and the Austrian military and police forces quickly defeated the conspirators. In 1935, Kaltenbrunner was jailed again on suspicion of high treason. Though this charge was dropped, he was sentenced to 6 months imprisonment for conspiracy, and he lost his license to practice law. From mid-1935, Kaltenbrunner was head of the illegal SS regional section in Linz, and was considered a leader of the Austrian SS. To provide Heinrich Himmler and Reinhard Heydrich with new information, Kaltenbrunner repeatedly made trips to Bavaria. He would hide on a train and on a ship that traveled to Passau, then return with money and orders for Austrian comrades. Also, through these activities, Kaltenbrunner helped bringing about the Anschluss with Germany, which became reality in the spring of 1938, when Adolf Hitler annexed the federal state of Austria into the German Reich. The Anschluss took place over 3 days, between the 11th and 13th of March, 1938. The Anschluss was supported by many Austrians, who saw it as a political, social, and cultural reunification with their brother country Germany. Thousands turned out to greet Adolf Hitler, the native son who was returning to his homeland. For Austria's approximately 200,000 Jews, the Anschluss marked a terrible turning point. Beginning on the night of the 11th of March, and in the weeks that followed, there was pogrom-like violence across the country. Austrian Nazis and others beat up, attacked, and humiliated the Jews. They forced Jews to scrub the streets, clean public toilets, and perform humiliating exercises. Many decided to try to leave Austria, and lines appeared at consulates across the city of Vienna. When Hitler returned home to Berlin, he was greeted as a hero. The Anschluss was the Nazi German regime's first act of territorial aggression and expansion. Even though the leaders of the West saw the Anschluss as an invasion, not one government made a move to stop Hitler, who without interference felt free to embark upon the next step in his scheme to conquer all of Europe. Austria was no longer an independent country and became a province of Nazi Germany referred to by a new name, the Ostmark. Arthur Seyss-Inquart became its governor, and Kaltenbrunner was awarded the role of State Secretary for Public Security. In that capacity, he supervised Adolf Eichmann's Central Office for Jewish Emigration in Vienna, which opened officially on the 20th of August, 1938. According to internal estimates, the Central Office facilitated the emigration of 110,000 Austrian Jews between August 1938 and June 1939, and was so successful in its forced emigration efforts that it created a template often called the Vienna Model, or a Reich-wide Reich Central Office for Jewish emigration. On the 10th of April, 1938, Ernst Kaltenbrunner became a member of the German Reichstag, the parliament of Nazi Germany. In his position, Kaltenbrunner helped to establish Mauthausen, which was the first Nazi concentration camp opened in Austria following the Anschluss. Mauthausen and its subcamps were the concentration camps with the harshest imprisonment conditions and the highest mortality. Kaltenbrunner inspected the camp on a few occasions. During one such occasion, in the summer of 1943, 15 prisoners were selected to demonstrate for Kaltenbrunner 3 methods of killing: by gunshot to the neck, hanging, and gassing. After the killings were performed, Kaltenbrunner inspected the crematorium and later the quarry. The rock quarry in Mauthausen was at the base of the so-called Stairs of Death. Prisoners were forced to carry roughly hewn blocks of stone, often weighing as much as 50 kilograms or 110 pounds, up 186 stairs, one prisoner behind the other. As a result, many exhausted prisoners collapsed in front of the others in the line, and then fell on top of the other prisoners, creating a domino effect, the first prisoner falling onto the next and so on, all the way down the stairs. Prisoners were forced to carry boulders from morning until night, while being whipped by the Nazi guards. An estimated 197,000 prisoners passed through Mauthausen concentration camp and its subcamps between August 1938 and May 1945, and at least 95,000 died there. On the 11th of September 1938, Heinrich Himmler, the head of the SS, appointed him higher SS and police leader and put the entire SS and police in the annexed Austria under his command. However, Kaltenbrunner felt left out, since he often felt ignored in his competences by the SS leadership around Reinhard Heydrich. The Second World War began on the 1st of September 1939, when Nazi Germany invaded Poland. On the 27th of the same month, Heinrich Himmler established a new agency, Reich Security Main Office, which formalized the relationship between the intelligence service, VSD, and the security police, which consisted of the Gestapo and the Kripo, which was the criminal police. This new agency, led by Himmler's deputy, Reinhard Heydrich, was an ideologically radical and brutal institution responsible for coordinating and perpetrating many aspects of the Holocaust. The Reich Security Main Office did not directly control all aspects of the mass murder of Europe's Jews, but it was very important for planning and organizing Nazi policy. The organization coordinated forced immigration policies and organized Europe-wide deportations to ghettos, killing sites, and killing centers. It also developed poison gas killing methods and deployed the Einsatzgruppen, the Nazi mobile death squads, that from 1941 to 1945, while operating behind the front line in Nazi-occupied Eastern Europe, murdered around 2 million innocent men, women and children, accounting for 1/3 of all Jewish Holocaust victims. It was also the Reich Security Main Office that in January 1942 hosted the notorious Wannsee Conference, where its leaders discussed the implementation of the final solution with other top German officials. Reinhard Heydrich led the organization until his death in June 1942. Himmler then temporarily took over its management for approximately 6 months until January 1943, when he appointed Ernst Kaltenbrunner, a new leader of the organization. Kaltenbrunner's appointment came as a surprise given the other possible candidates. It is believed that he was selected for this position because he was, as Heinrich Himmler, a committed anti-Semite and also expected to be more pliable in Himmler's hands. Under Kaltenbrunner's command, the genocide of Jews picked up pace. He stayed constantly informed over the status of the concentration camp activities, receiving periodic reports at his office. As head of the organization, Kaltenbrunner had the authority to order protective custody in and release from concentration camps. Orders of this kind were usually issued with his signature. On the 21st of June, 1943, Kaltenbrunner was also promoted to SS Obergruppenführer and General of the Police. He also replaced Heydrich as president of the International Criminal Police Commission, the organization today known as Interpol. To combat homosexuality across the Greater Reich, in July 1943, Kaltenbrunner pushed the Ministry of Justice for an edict mandating compulsory castration for anyone found guilty of this offense. While this was rejected, he still took steps to get the army to review some 6,000 cases to prosecute homosexuals. Kaltenbrunner himself was a married man. With his wife, also a Nazi Party member, Elisabeth Eder, he had 3 children. However, as with his superior, Heinrich Himmler, he also had extramarital affairs. And with his aristocratic longtime mistress, Gisela Grafin von Westarp, he had twins who were born in 1945. In October 1943, Kaltenbrunner told Herbert Kappler, the head of the German police and security services in Rome, that the eradication of the Jews in Italy was of special interest for general security. 4 days later, Kappler's SS and police units began rounding up and deporting Jews by train to Auschwitz concentration camp. 7,680 out of 44,500 Italian Jews perished during the Holocaust. By 1944, the Axis was losing the war, and the Red Army was at Hungary's borders. Fearing that the Soviets would overrun the country, Hungarian Admiral Miklos Horthy and Prime Minister Miklos Kálai recognized that Germany would likely lose the war and tried to negotiate a separate armistice for Hungary with the Western Allies. Horthy even promised to surrender unconditionally to them once they reached Hungarian territory. An enraged Hitler summoned Horthy to a conference in Klesheim Castle near Salzburg, and when on the 18th of March, both heads of state conducted their negotiations at Klesheim Castle, German forces quietly marched from Austria into Hungary. The meeting served merely as a ruse to keep Horthy out of the country and to leave the Hungarian army without orders. Ernst Kaltenbrunner was present for the negotiations, and on the 19th of March, escorted Horthy back to Hungary. Accompanying Horthy and Kaltenbrunner on the journey was Adolf Eichmann, Kaltenbrunner's childhood friend and Nazi comrade, who brought with him a special Einsatzkommando unit to begin the process of rounding up and deporting Hungary's 750,000 Jews. Horthy was told he could only stay in office if he dismissed Kálai and appointed a new government that would fully cooperate with Hitler and his plenipotentiary in Budapest, Edmund Wesselmayer. Knowing the likely alternative was an appointed Nazi who would treat Hungary in the same manner as the other countries under German occupation, Horthy acquiesced. In less than 2 months, from the 15th of May to the 9th of July, 1944, nearly 440,000 Jews were deported from Hungary in more than 145 trains. Most were deported to Auschwitz-Birkenau, where upon arrival, and after selection on a rail ramp, about 80% of the deportees were gassed on arrival. Because the crematoria were unable to cope with the number of corpses, firing pits were dug where bodies were burned. In light of the worsening military situation, and facing threats from Allied leaders of war crime trials, Horthy ordered a halt to the deportations on the 7th of July, 1944, and by the time they had stopped 2 days later, almost the entire community of Jews in the Hungarian countryside had died. On the 20th of July, 1944, after a failed bomb attempt to assassinate Hitler on his airplane, Klaus von Stauffenberg and other conspirators attempted to assassinate Adolf Hitler inside his Wolfslair field headquarters. This operation was originally designed to militarily combat potential civil unrest in Germany, and the conspirators modified the plan for their own aims with the intention of taking control of German cities, disarming the SS, and arresting key Nazi leaders in the wake of the plot. Immediately in the wake of the 20th of July plot, Kaltenbrunner was summoned to Hitler's wartime Wolfslair to begin the investigation into who planned the assassination attempt. In the days that followed, Hitler ordered a massive hunt for conspirators, which continued for months. In August 1944, some of the arrested perpetrators of the failed assassination were brought before the notorious People's Court, presided by Roland Freisler, a fanatical Nazi judge. Hitler had ordered that those found guilty should be hanged like cattle. The proceedings were filmed in order to be shown to the German public in cinema newsreels, and Ernst Kaltenbrunner appeared as a spectator in them. In the end, more than 7,000 people were arrested, and 4,980 were executed, often on the barest evidence. On the 15th of November, 1944, Kaltenbrunner was awarded the Knight's Cross of the War Merit Cross with Swords, and in December of the same year, he was granted the additional rank of the General of the Waffen-SS, which was the military branch of the SS. In addition, he was awarded the Nazi Party Golden Party Badge and the Blood Order, which was one of the most prestigious decorations in the Nazi Party. Ernst Kaltenbrunner was the ideological fanatic committed to the Nazi regime to the bitter end. Using his authority as chief of the Reich Security Main Office, on the 6th of February 1945, when it was clear that the war was lost, he issued a decree that allowed policemen to shoot disloyal people at their discretion without judicial review. On the 12th of March 1945, a meeting took place at Vorarlberg between Kaltenbrunner and Karl Jakob Burckhardt, president of the International Committee of the Red Cross. Kaltenbrunner promised Burckhardt that Red Cross delegates would be granted access to the concentration camps, but this was subject to one condition, that these delegates remained in the camps until the end of the war. With the end of the war approaching, Kaltenbrunner was also involved in the extermination of large numbers of concentration camp prisoners, with the intention of preventing them from being liberated by Allied armies. On the 18th of April, 1945, 3 weeks before the war ended, Himmler named Kaltenbrunner commander-in-chief of the remaining German forces in southern Europe. Kaltenbrunner attempted to organize cells for post-war sabotage in the region and Germany, but accomplished little. Hitler made one of his last appearances on the 20th of April, 1945, outside his subterranean Führerbunker in Berlin, where with one arm shaking as a result of Parkinson's disease, he pinned medals on boys from the Hitler Youth for their bravery. Kaltenbrunner was among those present. While most of the boys would perish that day while holding the city against the Russians, Ernst Kaltenbrunner, realizing the end was near, fled from Berlin. He entrenched himself with a few of his last followers in the so-called Alpine fortress near Altausee, where resistance was to be offered to the bitter end, and to which many prominent National Socialists had brought stolen treasures in order to provide for the time after the war. After learning of their hideout, an American special agent, Robert E. Matheson, organized and led a patrol at night over the dangerous and glacial trails to their mountain retreat. Dressed in Austrian clothes, Matheson approached their cabin alone and unarmed, and after repeatedly knocking on the door, aroused the occupants. Breaking down the door, Special Agent Matheson and his men captured Kaltenbrunner, his aide Arthur Scheidler, 2 SS guards, and found 2 machine pistols, 4 rifles, 2 pistols, and a submachine gun with a large supply of ammunition. In the end, justice finally caught up with Kaltenbrunner when he was tried at the Nuremberg Trials, which were held against representatives of the defeated Nazi Germany. During the initial stages of the Nuremberg Trials, Kaltenbrunner was absent because of 2 episodes of cerebral hemorrhage, which required several weeks of recovery time. After he was released from military hospital, his request for pardon was denied, and he was handed the indictment and charged with crimes against humanity and war crimes. Kaltenbrunner, an intimidating figure at 6'4" in height, and a facial scar caused by a car accident after driving under the influence of alcohol, began to cry. He pleaded not guilty to the charges, spoke of the mistreatment he had received in English custody, and seemed like a broken man. After a short time, however, Kaltenbrunner turned into a man who would fight for his life by all means. Kaltenbrunner said that all decrees and legal documents that bore his signature were rubber-stamped and filed by his adjutants. He also said Gestapo Chief Heinrich Müller had illegally affixed his signature to numerous documents in question. Kaltenbrunner argued in his defense that his position as Reich Security Main Office chief existed only theoretically, and said he was only active in matters of espionage and intelligence. He maintained that Himmler, as his superior, was the person culpable for the atrocities committed during his tenure as chief of the organization. Kaltenbrunner also asserted that he had no knowledge of the final solution before 1943, and went on to claim that he had protested against the ill treatment of Jews to Himmler and Hitler. Further denials from Kaltenbrunner included statements that he knew nothing of the Commissar Order, which ordered German soldiers to shoot Soviet Communist Party officials taken prisoner, and that he never visited Mauthausen concentration camp, despite photo documentation of the visit. During all the interrogations, Kaltenbrunner strongly protested against being called Heydrich's successor. He added that while he had been paid 1,820 Reichsmarks, which was the salary of a general of the police, Heydrich's income from his office had been more than 30,000 Reichsmarks. Kaltenbrunner was also among the major initiators and organizers of Operation Reinhardt, which was a code name for the systematic extermination of the Jews in a general government district of German-occupied Poland. 3 killing centers were established as part of this operation: Belzec, Sobibor, and Treblinka. When Kaltenbrunner was asked if he knew that 400,000 Jews were murdered at the extermination plant at Treblinka, which was operational between the 23rd of July, 1942, and October 1943 when he was in office, he replied no. However, his lies did not help him escape justice. On the 1st of October, 1946, the International Military Tribunal found Ernst Kaltenbrunner guilty of war crimes and crimes against humanity and sentenced him to death by hanging. Kaltenbrunner was executed by American Army Sergeant John C. Woods, who had no documented pre-war experience as a hangman. It is believed that he was deliberately bad at his job to make the 10 Nazi war criminals that he executed that day suffer, as they all died a long, agonizing death. The Nazis executed by Sergeant Woods fell from the gallows with a drop insufficient to snap their necks, resulting in their death by strangulation that in some cases lasted several minutes. Additionally, the trapdoor was too small, causing several of the condemned to suffer bleeding head injuries as they fell. On the 16th of October, 1946, the day of his execution, Ernst Kaltenbrunner was the third of the Nuremberg defendants to mount the scaffold. After he had said his last words, "I have loved my German people and my fatherland with a warm heart. I have done my duty by the laws of my people. And I am sorry my people were led this time by men who were not soldiers and that crimes were committed of which I had no knowledge. I fought honorably. Germany, good luck." Kaltenbrunner was hanged, but because he fell from the gallows with insufficient force to snap his neck, his horrible convulsing lasted 11 long minutes before he died. He was 43 years old. After that, his corpse was cremated and scattered in the River Isar. Sergeant Woods later not only insisted that he had performed all executions correctly, but also stated he was very proud of his work. There were no tears shed for Ernst Kaltenbrunner.
Thanks for watching the World History channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.